Hi, I'm Zach. This is the fucking Shaking Fist, and welcome. Today we're going to make fun of inspiring philosophy. Who doesn't like to make fun of inspiring philosophy? This jackass likes to pretend like he knows it all about biblical fucking history and all this shit without listening to any scholars that don't agree with him first. He doesn't even speak any of the languages, yet professes to know better than almost all the biblical scholars that have been trained in this, but because he believes it, it's more important. So let's get ready to make fun of this dumb fuck, because he's going to talk about how the flood is definitely real and has all the proof of science needs, and we don't need to listen to literally anyone else because it's not stolen from Mesopotamian flood myths at all. So that's cool. And this is a sequel video to the last time I made fun of inspiring philosophy, talking about eating, and I'll put that up there. You see that? You see that? That's a playlist of the three videos that it took to talk. Was it 2, 3, 4 videos that it took to make fun of him? So that's that though. So you go watch that, and then we can carry on with this because this. I don't know. I haven't watched it yet. I just wanted to release a music video, so I thought I'd make fun of something to do with the flood to coincide with the music video. So that's cool. Um, so like, subscribe, leave a comment. Please leave a timestamp. If you're talking about a specific moment, because sometimes I don't know what all you lovely people are talking about, and I just kind of have to make it up because as soon as that video is out, I'm already on to the next one, and I've forgotten everything I've said about that particular video and what was in it because my brain only has so much room, and I cannot allow last week's video to interfere with this week's. So that's cool. I say that not being cool. So. This video is going to be fun because I haven't watched it yet. I haven't vetted it yet. I just wanted to make fun of inspiring philosophy and the flood. And maybe making fun of the flood and things in Genesis might actually give me a kick up the ass to do a little bit of that, Religion Unraveled, where I can start reading through the Bible. It's harder doing that one because I'm much more used to doing videos like this where I just put a video on and I go, look at this stupid asshole. And now I've done a bunch of studying and I have lots of things to say, but actually writing them down in a cohesive way is more difficult for me than I thought. So that's fun. So that might be out by 2026. We'll see. Anyway, onwards, upwards. Let's make fun of this cunt, and at some point we'll bring on a music video during the releasing of all that we're making fun of, because this is a 20-minute video, so it's going to be a couple videos, so it'll be some time, and then you never know. Anyway, onward.
Long ago, many cultures say a great catastrophe happened. The entire known world was destroyed by a flood, wiping out all known life, except for a few that survived in an ark.
All the cultures in the world, the Incans, the Mayans, the Indus Valley people, the Chinese, the Egyptians. I'm being silly. Of course the Chinese have a flood myth. There was a civil engineer called Yu who was tasked by the people before China, before China was a country, the Qin Empire. They sent a guy called Yu and said, hey, this Yangtze River, this Yellow River is a bit much, and it keeps on flooding far too much, and it keeps on destroying things, and it's far too wild. Go and tame it and make it civilized like all of us Chinese people that haven't been created yet. And then he walked up and down, and the story goes, he walked past his family a couple times, oh, his baby's been born, oh, it's talking, it's got first steps, and he ignores them all the time because making his country better is more important. You can see how Taoism came about, can't you? Is it Taoism? Or whatever, one of them. Obey! So then, they, he eventually cut some holes in some mountains and some channels, and outlets for the river every time it flooded to make it more tameable down. And then the Chinese Empire sprung from that, and they have that flood myth. So it's like a couple weeks, about a month or two ago, when I was watching on stream some jackass.
Dan, so glad you are here. Thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thanks for having me. This should be fun.
Talking to Alan, that other jackass, Alan Parr, about the flood, that he's like, well, there's the Mesopotamian myths, and the Mesopotamian myths, They're only there because they're actually talking about the Jewish myths. And, but those Greek myths that talk about a flood, well, they're taken from the Jewish myth, because if it's before or after, it always proves what I wanted to prove, because it's my religion. And because it's my religion, well, then I have to show how it is my religion. Do you get how that works? You see how they come up with an answer and then they have to work backwards, and it doesn't matter. Evidence be damned.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
She blinded me with silence.
Backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man, the backwards man. I can walk backwards fast as you can.
They'll make it up as they wish, because well, Kenneth Kitchen says the thing here, and William Lane Craig says the thing, and they all agree with me. And because we're all starting with our answers and then working backwards, well, then we'll get all the best explanations, because we already have the answer. We just don't have the explanation. Isn't it fun? And of course, let us not forget that Saint Michael fucking Jones here is saying that. It's funny, I got a friend called Mike Jones that amuses me every time I say it. So, let me get this straight. We get, all these floodwaters happen, and we have various peoples that don't have flood myths, and that doesn't matter, because they're just lying about God and God's actions, because they definitely experienced it, and the fact that they don't want to talk about it is more proof that it happened, you see, because they're not Christians and they're not Jewish, and they don't have any connection to the Abrahamic religions. So if they don't have any any connection to the Abrahamic religions, then inherently they just must be wrong, right? Because, well, God has given everyone his grace and knowledge, and through Jesus, so no one has an excuse, and it's just one of those people that didn't know about it. Well, they're just a bunch of evil heathens that are being lied to by the devil and feeding the rest of the world the devil's lies and doing the devil's work for him, right? I really wish I could just, come up with shit like that. I really wish that I, with a straight face, could not give a shit enough to just say, well, do you know what? All these people are evil because, hey, they don't agree with me. So, hey, we get to listen to Michael fucking philosophy here talk about, all the evidence he has that it definitely happened, even though, to be honest, I said I didn't watch it. This is almost a little bit of a lie. I filmed a bunch of this before, and I pontificate and I go on and on and on. So I didn't actually. I filmed about like half an hour to 45 minutes of video. I only got like three fucking minutes in this fucking video. So hey, that's cool, right? So yeah, you got to cobble together any bit of evidence that can vaguely seem like it's going to be yours, because I know that all us Christians and Jews were saying that all this stuff happened because it was in the Bible, and we couldn't read Akkadian, or any of the cuneiform languages, so it was all cool until we started to read it, right? And then, oh my God, what? They have the same stories as us? It proves us. It doesn't take away from the fact that these were written hundreds of years before any of the Jews ever settled anywhere. Was it the Stele of Merneptah, 1208, 1308? The fucking BCE? Merneptah's like, and Israel's seed is not, because he killed them all. Or he said he did anyway. But I'm forgetting something. I'm just glossing over, because he says, of course, that it kills all the animals. And I'm going to be, I'm going to be kind enough to say, of course, he doesn't mean the ones on the ark. But let's just go every other animal that isn't in the ark, you see? All the ones that aren't in the ark, they all died, right? And it just rained, and the deluge came from the sky because it was raining / the vault, the rent opened in the fucking, oh my God, what's it called? The big sky dome keeping out the water, the firmament, and the water comes in, and it comes in from below, and this guy's is here, and it's coming down here, and it's raining there, and it's flooding. So all these animals come down, right? you know, of course, he says all the other animals died. So all these other animals died in presumably quite moist conditions, as the bodies might actually sink into the mud, especially as the water starts to drain away, and that pressure of the water not just sitting on top of it, because of course it was higher than any mountain. And if it's higher than any mountain, well, that includes Everest, which is like, what, 4, 5, 6, 7 miles above the actual sea level? So then it was above that, so the light definitely didn't get all the way to the bottom, so it would kill all the plants as well. Shrubs, leaves, flowers, trees, all that, because there wasn't enough light. It was salt water and all that, you know. And so what we should actually be able to do, like, you know, when, say, the asteroid collided into... So I always say you could. I always think fucking another place, but the Yucatan Peninsula with the fucking, you know, the asteroid came down and killed all the dinosaurs. You know, with the things, the dust went in the air and killed. You know, covered the sky, and it went dark, and plants started dying, and bigger predators. You know all that stuff. So how about when that happened, we have a nice fine layer of iridium across the entire globe, where, you know, all this fucking space dust got kicked into the air with a giant fucking, like 6 mile wide fucking asteroid hit fucking Mexico, right? And went, boom, and it killed everything, you see. And because of that, all the dust that flew up, we can find that layer of iridium over the entire Earth. Why can't we find that fucking layer with the flood? Why isn't there just this the whole layer of fucking just a sec? When mud, how long does mud turn rock mud? Rock made out of mud. So, realistically, shouldn't we actually find, I don't know, a giant fucking layer of, like, shale mudstone stuff, right? Just filled to the brim with, like, the end of species, of just bones, because, like, you know, there's loads of mud everywhere because, you know, it's only dirt, and when it gets wet, it turns muddy, and when, you know, say for 40, 50 days or whatever, you just have all this water on top of it just sat there, you see. So what that means is, regardless of where the fuck you are, right, there should be bodies of extinct animals from 6,000 years ago littered everywhere, right, because the bodies should float, shouldn't they? You know, things die and they float for a bit before they become waterlogged and sinked, because, you know, water displacement. But I'm not getting into that here. So the shale layer should be covered the entire way around the Earth, not very deep down, covered in animal bones. And these animal bones should not just, and they should be from everywhere, right? Because the turbulent water should move them everywhere and should take them to places that they shouldn't normally be, right? So they shouldn't fit clear defined lines. And, like, you know, you should be able to find a kangaroo in Africa. You should be able to find all this different shit everywhere, because the water would have transported them all over the Earth because of the turbulent churning waters coming from above, below, and the rain. And it's, you know, all these people like Ken Ham and fucking, you know, was it Hawaiian Shirt Knobhead and all this stuff, right? What they want to do is they want to talk about how, like, the Grand Canyon, all these things were definitely made from that, right? So, if we don't find a layer of shale with all these fucking, you know, various bits of trees, well, 66 million years ago, so if we don't find all these bones and all these different things from a flood that happened only a few thousand years ago, because it shouldn't be that fucking deep down, should it? Because if it only happened a few thousand years ago, considering that we can see mud layers from a couple centuries ago, then a few thousand years shouldn't be that much fucking deeper. It's almost like when we do archaeology or geology, we can find different strata layers that have different things in them, can also that include the composition of the fucking soil. So it's like, I don't know, if a bunch of water, you know, from the seas and everything kind of went into the soil, we would be able to actually see through the genetic composition, through the fucking chemical composition of the soil, that it would be the same as all the other ones. It's almost like we could prove this scientifically, but because it never has, we have to go around the fucking things, just go, do you know what, maybe if I read it this way, it means this, and if I read it this way, it means this. He's not even got into any of his evidence, and I'm already fucking furious. This is so much fun. Hooray! Fuck! Fuck inspiring philosophy. How about that? I'm 13 seconds in.
Oh, it's going to be a great
But did this event actually happen?
No!
Or was it simply a Mesopotamian myth that was plagiarized and added to the Bible?
Yes. It's almost like, at various times, Israel, Judah, whatever, was taken over by Mesopotamia and Egypt, and actually included some of the myths in the fucking stories of what they were doing. So it's almost like in the 7th century BCE, I don't know, Assyria came in and kicked the shit out of Israel to the north, because Israel had been, conspiring, and not modern day Israel, old Israel, it's like in Anatolia, kind of, in like the northern Levant, because it was the northern kingdom, you see. Of most of the tribes, there was 10 of them, you see. So it was a bigger country, it had more arable land, they had more specialized farming and all this stuff. And when it came close, and after the fall of the fucking Bronze Age, the Bronze Age collapse, these people got up, and then Assyria starts doing stuff. So then Israel starts actually conspiring with other kingdoms around to form a fucking army to fight against Syria, and wins, right? And then Assyria comes back and fucking kicks the shit out of Israel, right? So then Judah's like, oh no, we're only 2 tribes and we don't have that good a land and it's really shit, and Judah is nothing compared to Israel. Right? Oh, well, I guess maybe then, I guess we'll just become a vassal state? Yes, can we take some of your rules? We'll rewrite our holy books thusly.
Kneel, slave.
Yes, my master.
I would never say that.
Please, let me play my character.
My body and will are yours to defile, my master.
When Josiah in Judges says, "Hey, I found the book of the Lord in the temple when I'm redoing the temple," because we need to rewrite everything around the time we became a vassal state. So the idea that Moses is on an ark has nothing to do with like Zarathustra or Atrahasis or anything like that. No.
Where we left off in this series was on the location of the land of Eden, which fit the description of a lost, habitable area that is now beneath the Persian Gulf.
I mean, go watch that video. You can see all this lovely stuff.
But perhaps the problem might not be with the actual description of Eden. Or perhaps this is based on a mistranslation. What about the alleged Gihon River that allegedly went into Ethiopia? James Hoffmeyer says, a possible candidate for the now defunct Pishon River. It's possibly referring to the land of the Kaziites, being in the Zagros Mountains. John Walton notes the Hebrew language of claiming a mist coming up to water the land might be referring to springs. It seems only the Hebrews preserve the memory of the Gulf oasis. It seems only the Hebrews preserve the memory of the Gulf oasis. It seems only the Hebrews preserve the memory of the Gulf oasis.
My DJ's in the coma for letting the record skip, letting the record skip, letting the record skip.
I don't know what happened there. That's almost like that's really important for much later in the video. Like, not this video, though. His video. So maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 23 videos down the line, you'll see.
But the overall description of the land of Eden does seem to be reliably describing an area no other culture wrote about. But it does show the description in Genesis 2 seems reliable and probably describes a place that actually existed at one time. Therefore, it seems very unlikely this account of Eden was written or copied from mythology during the Babylonian exile, and probably is a reliable oral tradition. It refers to the land of Arabia as Havilah, which appears to be an older name for the area, does likely suggest that Eden was actually a place that existed long ago, so it would have been written down before the Kaziites ruled over the old Babylonian Empire. I'll admit this last piece of data is a little speculative.
Lies, lies, and more lies, and lies on top of lies.
Doesn't sound like divine planning to me. Sounds more like human planning. Sounds more like one group trying to control another group.
And you can see how he lies and tries to coerce you into believing that Eden definitely existed in the middle of the Red Sea, because the Red Sea is the one place that you can't examine because it's under the water, and we never do any underwater geological surveys or anything like that. And I need to stop going on. I'm going to not go on about everything I go on about in that video. You could just go fucking watch it after you watch this one, of course, because that is a very fun series as well. It's always fun making fun of Inspiring Philosophy, because he thinks because he does a little bit of extra research, well then that means that all of his things are just that little bit bit more true because he's talking about things that you wouldn't normally talk about, you see? And he thinks that he's engaging people on a more scientific level, even though actually I know if we just make up the names of rivers and put them where we want, and we can just make up whatever we wish. So I can't wait to see what this prick has to say about the flood. We're only 42 seconds into this video.
However, for many years, it was argued this area gradually became the Gulf, over hundreds or thousands of years. As the Ice Age ended, sea levels slowly rose and filled in the Gulf, pushing humans out of the area. Flood legends were then embellished to give us the stories we have today.
Yeah, because, you know what? When the Ice Age ended, when did the Ice Age end? So the last Ice Age is supposed to have ended about 10 to 12,000 years ago. And it's weird how we probably weren't spending 10 to 12,000 years. Well, I suppose it was 7 to 8,000 years. You know, just telling each other about a great gradual flood that eventually became a big one. No. Like, look off. The people of Mesopotamia live on the floodplains of the Tigris and Euphrates before they merge with another river. I talk about in that last video, the video that you should go watch where he talks about that. I can't even remember what it's called. Whether they meet before they go into the Persian Gulf, right? And before, you know, we started getting better with, like, you know, irrigation, the floods were really bad. And, like, the floods could be so bad, right, that these floods could be so bad that, like, the river wouldn't be there the next day. It would move because it would flood, and then as it dried up, the path of the river would change because, you know, it had flooded so much that it went down another riverbed that it had made previously, you know, because it's sandy and rocky and erosion happens and, you know. So you have to make up some kind of story about, like, why these giant floods happen. You see, when you talk about Zarathustra, he just saves a bunch of people on a barge, you know, like an ark. And we talk about the Atrahasis, he saves a bunch of animals on the ark because he's told by a godlike figure, Enki. I say godlike, he is a god. You know, that maybe he should build an ark to save things because, like, you know, Enlil wants to kill everyone, or Marduk wants to kill everyone, or whoever. You know, because, like, you're keeping him up at night because you're praying too much, making too much noise with your exaltations and shit. Because they don't want you to fucking follow him, you know. And, you know, it's definitely... So, yes, they're not plagiarized word for word. You know, like today's plagiarism where I want to do a book report for school, so I nicked all the information out of Wikipedia. No. But there's another kind of plagiarism, right? And it's a little bit more respected, you know, because they're just copying tropes. But, like, so, let's take Lord of the Rings, for instance. Lord of the Rings itself has taken many of its tropes and many of its through lines, like, you know, from the Bible itself, you know, there's an all-powerful incorporeal God that's above everything, that speaks things into existence, you know, and, like, you know, you've got a whole different land that's flat than the earth that everybody lives on, that's round, and, like, a special cloud gateway that you have to go through, you know, with the blue of the water symbolizing the sky, and you have, like, first age elves that are definitely angels and stuff like that, you know. And, you know, you got the Jesus figure of Aragorn coming back to defeat the Dark Lord and all that stupid shit, right? But the thing is that goes further than that, right? So in the late 70s, early 80s, Terry Brooks started writing a fantasy series called The Sword of Shannara, with a book called The Sword of Shannara. And that book is a very big rip-off of Lord of the Rings. And it's a very loving book of, you know, rip-off of Lord of the Rings. You know, both Wheel of Time, you know, The Eye of the World, and Sword of Shannara, they both rip off, but they both rip off Lord of the Rings, and Wheel of Time even rips off Shannara, but they're fantastic books. I'm not saying that. I'm not taking away from how good they are. But my point is you know, you got like two, you know, so what? You got 4 hobbits that leave Hobbiton in Lord of the Rings, and then you have, you know, the 2 humans that leave with the wizard in Shannara, and they meet like an adventurer guy in a pub. You know, that's basically Aragorn, and then like Wheel of Time, you've got the 4 humans that leave the 2 rivers, which isn't by water at all. You know, away taken by the wizard and her swordsman Lan, who's not Aragorn, who's not Gandalf / and Aragorn together just from the start. You see, no, none of that at all. And in all 3 of the books, the party doesn't come together with more groups of people from different races to defeat the Dark Lord, and they don't get separated and then have to find each other again at the end either. You know, it's got Ogier, Wheel of Time has Ogier in it, which are basically ants, but like not trees. You know, you humans are so hasty. They're just ants. We got King of the Silver River in Shannara, which is definitely Tom Bombadil. You know what I mean? This old guy from well in the past that has all these magical powers and different stuff that nobody can really understand. And I mean, even that, you have the Green Man in Eye of the World. I mean, it's called like Wheel of Time's first book, it's called Eye of the World, and that's not Sauron in a tower from far away. In all three of them, of course, you know, it's fantasy. You've always got to have a Dark Lord in a tower from a very long far away. But, you know, Wheel of Time has Pattern Fane. But I said, of course, that Wheel of Time also starts to rip off Shannara. And it does. So Shannara is Earth in the future, right? And it's doing its Lord of the Rings stuff in the first book. It very much changes after that. It starts getting steampunky and sci-fi as it goes along. It's really good. And it goes through successive generations of Omsfords. That's the descendants of Gerald Shannara. And what's it called? The world grows as it goes and everything. But in Wheel of Time, you have a post-apocalyptic Earth that's much further in the future, and instead of seeing successive generations of the same families, you see one person being all the successive generations of himself, because it's a constantly replaying loop. That's why it's the Wheel of Time. I mean, there's so much more. Like there's an Celestial, you know, like from Lord of the Rings, the guy who chopped off the Sauron's hand with the ring. There's an Celestial in fucking Shannara. There's all sorts, right? The fact is that it doesn't matter that these things kind of rip each other off a little bit. You can do different stuff with it, but pretending that it isn't ripping it off is silly, right? Just because you can do very different stuff with it. So, like, just take Gandalf, for instance. You've got Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. He's this wise demigod wizard that gets sent down to Middle-earth to combat Sauron. And then, was it in Shannara, you have the Dark Lord, who, was it Bremen, I think? I can't remember his name. Who, you know, they tried to discover science again and failed, awoke in magic, and, you know, all the druids instead of wizards would come together, and, you know, instead of Gandalf being all nice and jolly and a little bit forceful, Alanon is very forceful, very angry, and he's not very nice at all. He just knows what needs to be done, and he's sick of trying to, like, you know, gently make people do what the fuck you're supposed to, right? And then you've got Moraine in Wheel of Time, which now it's a woman, so it's totally different, right? But she comes and she goes, I am the wizard with the secret knowledge that knows that actually you ones are the chosen ones, so you have to come with me and Aragorn, you see? They're all very similar. And pretending that just plagiarism, a straight word for word thing, doesn't mean anything. What they were trying to do was take someone else's culture and make it for their own. Because, well, they couldn't really bother to make up their own origin story, so if you nick someone else's and put your god at the head of it and kind of change them around a little bit, well then, you know, right now when you first create it, you're not really going to be able to argue with Mesopotamia about it, would you? But, you know, down the line, when it's a little bit more ingrained in and people don't know better, well, yeah, you totally can, because that's the point, isn't it? People weren't as nowhere near as intermingled as we were today, even with their closest neighbors, because who wants to walk 50 miles? Like, unless you're a trader. You know what I mean? So these sort of stories have become entirely insular and have no connection to King Josiah making Judah a vassal state in the 7th century BC at all, and also nicking some of the stories along with it. Nah, it's just me. It's just the devil whispering in my ear. But hey, if it's not plagiarizing, still only a minute into this video.
But in 2014, Dr. Mohammed El-Bastawazi published a paper with new evidence suggesting there was a major and sudden deluge that occurred at some point between 13,000 and 8,500 years ago, and filled in not just the Persian Gulf, but also the region of what would become ancient Sumer and parts of Arabia. He notes the formation of several wadi canyons fits the description of a sudden flood instead of a gradual sea level rise. The formation of several wadi canyons and funnel cuts along the entire extent of Tuwaiq clearly suggests that the breaching of this conspicuous escarpment was sudden and rapid, as the northern outlet of this megalake was insufficient to discharge the water. The overflow arms have developed extensive alluvial fans on the Arabian coast. The fan of Wadi al-Batin covered approximately 60,000 square kilometers in South Iraq, Kuwait, and northeastern parts of Saudi Arabia. The paper highlights the geomorphical structure of overflow channels and how several deep canyons were carved. These were found throughout Arabia, Kuwait, and Iraq, meaning the extent of the megaflood would have covered a large regional area. In fact, the overflow channel reaches are several kilometers in width and attain tens of meters in depth. However, the area was not sufficient to drain the water as fast as it filled, and so for a short period of time, a megalake would have existed in the region. Dr. Bastawazi concludes his paper by noting, therefore, it can be attested that the early Holocene period in Arabia has drastically reshaped the fluvial systems, groundwater, and indeed, the early human civilization.
Oh my fucking... is he really trying to say that because there's evidence of monsoons? You were joking, right? You fucking joking me? It's talking about a lake? Oh my god, how can you be so fucking stupid? I suppose when you're trying to get an answer, you're just going to say whatever you want and really just little pick here, little pick there, little cherry pick here. Christians really love the cherries, don't they? They go out on a nice sunny afternoon, they go out on a nice rainy afternoon, and they cherry pick here and they cherry pick there, because it's the only fucking fruit they care about, you see? This doesn't talk about a worldwide flood in the fucking slightest. What this talks about is the differences in the Holocene period, and the Pliocene period. What was it? Yeah, where there was megalakes that formed because of the melting of the ice caps. You see, and the changes of the changes of and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, because I'm reading it directly from the fucking paper. Directly from, was it, so let's just see. Introduction, understanding the quaternary climatic changes in the Great Sahara and Arabian deserts is important to determine the paleo-hydrological conditions that imposed a significant control of the flourishing of settlements and migrations and dispersal of humans throughout antiquities. Drake et al. 2012. Alternating periods of aridity, i.e. glacial, and increased rainfall, i.e. interglacial, in the Sahara could be related to the past variations in the monsoon system and the extent of the intertropical convergence zone. So what it's actually saying, and that's in the fucking introduction, you know, if you bothered to actually read the fucking thing instead of just picking out whatever bits are from another bit of information that somebody else talked about, because instead of reading the fucking thing, you just took somebody you believe talking about it. So what it's actually talking about is how the ice age how the melting of the ice age and actual flow of water from the Red Sea, right, and mountain ridges on the on the west side of fucking Saudi Arabia, right, actually had several, what does he call them, Paleolakes, giant Paleolakes, right, that eventually broke through because of erosion over a period of maybe a couple thousand years, not 40 days, right, actually broke through in a couple places, and a lot of those pictures he's showing are showing, I don't know, fucking tributaries from mountains in the west of Saudi Arabia as the water goes down into the wadis that drain into the Gulf of Arabia, you see. And the Gulf of Arabia does not become a Paleolake, even by the fucking picture this knobhead shows, because the fucking picture he shows is an ocean! It's a bay! It's connected to salt water. It's not a lake, as a lake is a bit of water that is completely surrounded by land with fresh fucking water, you see? Because if it's salt, it becomes a sea. Well, of course, unless you like the Salt Lake, in America. But, like the Dead Sea, because it's really salty. You see, because the dead fucking sea is probably a remnant of that giant flooding of the various canyon walls breaking and letting through these Paleolakes. And even one bit of it talks about how it goes up north. It doesn't go to the Red Sea. It goes up towards Sumeria. Maybe towards where the fucking Dead Sea is. And maybe that's why. Maybe that's why in that depressed bit of land there's so much salt water, you see. There's a very interesting picture he doesn't show, right? There's a very interesting picture he doesn't show. Let me just find it. Figure 7! Look at it. Expected deluge path and its overflow arms that breach the high topographical barriers in Arabia. See? Mr. Mike Jones thinks he's being really fucking clever because instead of talking about the fucking Grand Canyon, he's talking about a bunch of canyons that he doesn't think anyone will ever fucking look up because he's preaching to a bunch of brain-dead fucking Christians that went, oh, yeah, they'll just go, yes, oh, that is very interesting about these waterways in Saudi Arabia. No atheist will ever bother to look up the fucking paper he puts on the fucking screen. Any other fucking Christian, all they do is go, well, Mike Jones said it, so it's obviously true, because why would he lie to us? Look at all the effort he puts in. When you actually read the fucking thing, it nowhere, it says anywhere in it that it could imply that any of this happened because of a global fucking flood. It talks about melting ice waters and the changes in monsoons because of the ITCZ? That's what he talks about. But hey, it doesn't matter, right? Because we're talking about the Bible, and as long as I'm lying for the Bible, it's okay.
Similarly, before Bastawazi's paper, geologist Ward Sanford noted the current research of his day that suggested it was a gradual flood was insufficient to account for the geological data in Mesopotamia. He also found evidence in a 1998 paper that between 10,000 and 6,000 years ago, Indian monsoons reached into southern Arabia and created a wet period.
But don't you see? Because India had some fucking monsoons, right? And the ITCZ changed through climate change. Well, it's the flood, you see. You see, the monsoons changed, so there it's the flood. It's the flood, you see, because the monsoons changed, because because the more we look at things, the less it becomes, hey, look, it's a worldwide flood, and actually maybe it was super localized, really, and actually maybe it's all these things, and we can just pretend that all this evidence doesn't point to it actually being a super localized thing, and that actually it's worldwide, because we said that it is, you see. I love this. C. Sanford Ward E. Thoughts on Eden and the Flood and the Persian Gulf. Newsletter of the Affiliation of Christian Geologists. Volume 7, Number 1, 1999. From Wheaton College. It's really cool that we can use really biased scientific writings from people in a Christian setting going, I'm here to prove God true no matter what. And we could trust them because they're Christians and they would never lie, right? They're not all totally a bunch of actual walking scumfucks that are just have a head full of like evilness, jealousy, perniciousness, and fucking anger, wrath, and like just a general all over air of you have to do what I say because I'm doing the Lord's work. So it's nice that we can look at people like that and go, do you know what? Maybe they're 100% correct because they're not trying to confirm their own biases at all, right? You see, because, well, if we look at like geological things and go, hey, maybe it didn't happen over thousands and thousands of years. Maybe it happened only like a couple hundred years. Well, that's the same as 40 days, right? Because when you're speaking to a geologist, right? And you're a Christian geologist, maybe you don't think about actually maybe how long geology time spans are. And when you go, hey, this is definitely shorter than we thought, dickheads like this can go, well, actually, it goes from a couple thousand years to like 40 days. Instead of, actually, maybe it was a few hundred years. Maybe it was longer than that. You see, geology is really fucking slow, right? And we're talking about short geological times. We're still talking about a long fucking time and not 40 fucking days like your goddamn book says. But hey, I can't wait to see how he ties this all together and says how this is definitely true for the Bible, because, you know, what I like from Bible scholars is when they don't use the Bible as evidence and they go, hey, do you see all this stuff? Well, if we only look at it partially from far away with our eyes kind of closed, it's definitely evidence, right? So every time I say, hey, look at these fucks, look at these fucking cunts, and everything they do is about trying to find the smallest nug of fucking evidence they can, and just look at the entirety of this video and tell me how many small nugs of evidence there are and how many big nugs of this definitely happened there are. I'd love to see. You know, because even the fucking Christian geologist that he's fucking going off is going, well, you know, it's not a few thousand years, but it's not 40 days. But if we casually just brush over that, see, it was shorter, right? And the key word in that sentence is shorter. Unlike my explanations. Simple, easy, intuitive answers for hard, non-intuitive questions. It's all they give a flying fuck about.
Now, the monsoons typically lasted for about 4 weeks, which is closer to what Genesis records, that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. Whereas the polytheistic versions of the flood say it only rained for 7 days and 7 nights.
Oh, right. So I was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everybody. I didn't play the video for slightly long enough, right? And he does immediately say it afterwards. I told you I haven't watched this before, right? So, it's closer to the 40 days, but the Epic of Gilgamesh only says 7 days and 7 nights, you see? So, it says, 40 days, blah, 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 blah. And then it takes over a year for the water to recede, you see? Because it didn't just rain and go away. It says it takes a long fucking time for the water to recede, you see? So, when you say, well, it's just a couple weeks, well, then he's wrong as well! Because your own fucking Bible says that the water took a year to recede before the ark sat on top of Mount Ararat. Like, seriously. Hey, this is why they love cherry picking, right? Because so many of the Bibles don't have a consistent internal logic amongst themselves that they can pick and choose whichever bits of it they wish to make whatever points they wish. And that's the whole fucking point, isn't it? Because they don't give a shit about truth. They care about which cherry-picked fact can fit with which cherry-picked fact. That's all they give a shit about. And it's so fucking blatantly obvious. And then they're like, I don't get why everyone doesn't just believe us. I really miss the days when we were in charge and we made people believe us because we tortured them if they didn't. And us atheists are supposed to worry if we get too fucking salty. And these fuckers are salty all the time because all we do is prove them wrong.
So the Genesis account more aligns with what we would expect with the monsoon patterns of that region.
It wasn't a great flood, it was a monsoon! It wasn't the power of the Lord wreaking havoc upon the earth with fucking angels and create the Nephilim. And the world being evil because there was flesh set upon it. None of that, no. It was just some bad monsoons that lasted for a few days. And those monsoons created giant Paleolakes that broke through, some walls, canyons in the wadis in Western Arabia and then flowed north and northeast. And that is totally the entirety of the fucking flood of fucking Moses. And he's like, well, you see, it doesn't match up with the flood of Zarathustra because, Genesis says it was 40 days and 40 nights. And you see, the tale of Zarathustra only says 7. But the tale of Zarathustra also says that a bad monsoon basically comes in and fucking, it's brought in by the thing and it floods everything. And he puts all the things on a barge and then rides them down the river, to dry land.
Thus, we do have evidence that correlates with the biblical account. Long ago, a great flood reshaped the entire region and cut off humans from the Gulf Oasis, known later to the Hebrews as the Land of Eden.
Yep, totally the Land of Eden. You see, because it flooded, right, and then it deflooded, and because we don't really want to look there for it, it's Eden, you see. Eden.
However, could there have been global flooding? In other words, as the Persian Gulf flooded, Could there have been massive floods along coastal regions in a global sense? The idea is not inconceivable.
Inconceivable! You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, it's weird that 10 to 12,000 years ago, that most of the northern hemisphere was covered in ice, you see. And then you see when the ice melted, the water rose, and then places flooded because there was more water that wasn't frozen and was in a liquid state. But it's God's grace and it's God's grace and violent fury.
Numerous oral traditions do in fact support this notion. Several cultures from around the world report they experienced a sudden and catastrophic flood in the distant past. One study on Aboriginal oral traditions argues that corroborating evidence indicates Australia experienced catastrophic flooding that affected the coastal regions of the continent.
I know, it's really weird that all these Aboriginal people that, were more like an Aboriginal just means people in Australia, right? American Indians and all these people. It's weird how they lived closer to water and then the water rose after the ice melted. But if we just say that it's God constantly, then it must be God, right? Because, it's not a worldwide flood, it's just some coastal areas, and it wasn't a worldwide flood, it was just the breaking of the land structures that were acting as dams to several lakes over a period where that's the other thing in that fucking study before about Saudi Arabia. It says there was a dry period and then a wet period and then a dry period and a wet. It happened 3 times. But hey, 3 floods, right? 3 fucking floods. But hey, everybody has a story of a flood, kind of. So, it must be that. And it doesn't have anything to do with, the Ice Age ending or, I don't know, Western settlers going out and convincing Aboriginal peoples that live in, Brazil, Australia, and the Americas, like the Indians, all the different peoples that aren't, they were just fucking basically hunter-gatherers, right? And then these fucking super advanced people come in and go, oh, by the way, we're better than you, so our God's better, and this is how he did everything. And it's not at all like those sorts of stories and myths are going to permeate through a non-written culture. I know these fucking Christians go on about how verbal culture goes on all the time and can't conceive that maybe these people got told by Christians in the past. No, it's just that it's definitely them. It's definitely their ways true. And it took God, several 100,000 years / millions, billions of years to actually come to people and go, do you know what, maybe I should tell you what to do now. You see, because we have evidence of people 15,000 years ago and Göbekli Tepe. We have evidence of early Homo sapiens like 250,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago or whatever, Do you know how far back all this stuff goes? Pretty fucking far, right? So maybe you're all just a bunch of fucking bullshitting knobheads hoping and praying incessantly that some fucking myths created in fucking like Bronze Age, Iron Age 1 fucking Levantine thing is the true and only source of all truth in the world. Do you know how stupid that is? But of course not, because you believe it. You don't think it's stupid. It's holy and true. And God, that's because it's your God and it can't be any of the other gods because you were born in a time and a place where that isn't the case. And because you were born in a time and a place where that isn't the case, then it must be true because you were indoctrinated at a young age. Or at a particularly low point in your life when somebody went, do you know what? Look at this gullible fuck. We can make him believe whatever we want. And then he does it for the rest of his fucking life. Because, hey, if I don't read anything properly and I don't look through anything properly and I don't actually look at any of the evidence aside from Christian evidence that fucking corroborates with me, well, then everything I think is true because I'm super special, you see, and I know all the things because I'm super special and true, you see, because God made it so. Look, I've done a lot. I've done a lot. There's a lot that's been done. I can't deal with this anymore. There's so much more to go through. So I'm just going to end it there because, God damn it, it's annoying. I'm done. I'll see you all next week. Good night, everybody.